Well, welcome. It's a pleasure to be here today. If you remembered only one thing about Mayo Clinic, it's that everything we do is to serve our patients, and we work as a team to carry that out. Those are the distinguishing factors of our organization. I'll be showing you a couple things today that indicate how we've been doing that for many, many years. And all of our service today, all of our advances, our technological progress are built on the values and the culture of the Mayo family and the founding generation. So we'll kind of walk through Mayo's history. You're going to see things have changed, but really have not changed in terms of serving humanity. So with me here today is an ambulance. This is a 1905 Studebaker ambulance purchased by the Mayo family. It conveyed patients from our clinic in downtown Rochester to St. Mary's Hospital. The Mayo family then gave it back to Mayo Clinic for display here in the lobby. We're in the Matthews Grand lobby of Mayo Clinic. This is the one of the main patient thoroughfares of our organization. So why is an antique ambulance here? It's to remind our patients and our staff that we've always been about the business of serving humanity. Technology will change over the course of generations. It's changing very quickly. It's my first time on Periscope, so this is a whole new technology today for me. But tech will always change, but the values will never change. So our value is serving people. We just do it in the most advanced ways of every era. 1905, this was state of the art. Now, one of the neat things about working in the heritage area at Mayo is you meet people from all different walks of life. So come a little bit closer, Lee. I want you to meet this very special lady. This is Mrs. Edna Spica. Mrs. Spica was 100 years old when I met her. She was written up in the newspaper, and she was a vigorous woman. For her 100th birthday, she wrote a hot air balloon, did many wonderful things. But in the article about her 100th birthday, there was a small mention that she remembered riding in a horse-drawn ambulance as a little girl. And I thought, wow, what are the chances of that? So I called her 5:30 at night. She didn't know me from anybody, but I said, ma'am, you don't know me, but I'm the museum director. We have your ambulance in our lobby. You want to come down and see it? She said, of course. She came the next day and brought about 25 of her nieces and nephews. So this is Mayo Clinic. We stepped up. We had a little birthday gathering for her here, made her feel very special. We took her photo by this ambulance on her 100th birthday. But then she gave us the most remarkable gift. She gave us this photo. Here's Mrs. Edna Spica as a 5-year-old child when she was a patient in this ambulance. Woodrow Wilson was president when that picture was taken. So we tell our employees and our patients, look over here, in one patient's lifetime, Mayo went from this to this. So for all of us who work at Mayo, the real question is, what will I do, what will you do, Lee, and you do, Barb, to pass on Mayo Clinic to somebody else? And you're looking inside now, you see all the high-tech equipment. There's a stretcher. The jump seat is for the nurse or the attendant to sit on. Can you see the air conditioning, Lee? That's the vent up there on the side.
There you go.
That's the only air circulation. You would have that on a hot, humid Minnesota summer day. You'd also have that on a below zero Minnesota winter day. So it will be for all people.
So that beveled glass that they have, is that original?
It's all original.
Wow,
yeah.
yeah.
And it's in remarkably good condition. This was out at Mayowood, the Mayo family's country estate for many years. They're a very giving family. They wanted to share this with a large number of people, and they made that gift for us. And Heritage Hall was established by a family, John and Lillian Matthews. They are loyal patients of Mayo Clinic. They have a real heart for history. They wanted us to present Mayo's history and values in a way that everyone can understand. And I love my job. I get a lot of questions from kids doing their History Day projects, or they're doing a school report on things. So we can show artifacts, we can produce movies, we can capture information in a way that makes history come alive for people of all backgrounds. And Mr. and Mrs. Matthews, the founders of the museum, and many, many other donors have helped us out with that. So international is a big part of our culture. We are a world organization. So just where we're walking now, this is flooring of the Mayo building. From Italy, the columns here, Lee, that you see in our lobby, they're from Athens, Greece. The wall, just through the entryway there, the green wall with the names of our benefactors, that's from China. And then the red marble, as we enter the museum, is from Iran. And we have this here very intentionally to show respect for all people, so that whatever your background, whatever your place of origin or your walk of life, you're welcome here. Let's start out here. This is a message from Mr. and Mrs. Matthews, who founded the museum. And I'll just read it to you very briefly. It says, Mayo Clinic has been a good friend to our family for many years. May this museum inspire you with the values and vision of this great organization. John T. and Lillian G. Matthews, October 2004. History here is always linked to our present and our future. So history is never living in the past. It's inspiring us for our activity today with the hope of a better and healthier future yet to come. And the Matthews really made that possible with their generous gift. Take a look over here, Lee, behind the reception desk. We had a focus group one time, and we asked a very simple question. We said, what does Mayo Clinic mean to you? And you get lots of answers, sometimes quite detailed. People write paragraphs and such. One lady said it so well. She said, Mayo, M-A-Y-O, is another word for hope, H-O-P-E. So we took the word hope and we had it translated into all the languages spoken by our patients and staff. So the moment you walk in here, we hope that you will find a language that you can connect with. We even have Braille. We have Arabic, Hebrew, French, German, Spanish, all those languages to make everybody feel that they have a place here. So with that background, I'll show you a couple of our exhibits. And here we see the two brothers, William Mayo and his wife Hattie, Charles Mayo and his wife Edith. The Mayo brothers were surgeons, and they founded Mayo Clinic through their surgical practice. They became successful in their practice. They were very humble people, very generous people, and they realized, having achieved a measure of success, they wished to give back. So in the year 1919, the Mayo brothers and their wives signed a deed of gift. And in this gift, they donated their private practice, the land, the buildings, the equipment, and their life savings to endow us today, a nonprofit organization. So we're here today in 2015 because of their generous decision. So look over here. This is the inkwell that they would have used to sign their important documents. So if you make a gift to Mayo today, be it $10 or be it more, and you sign that check or you pass that credit card, this inkwell reminds you you're part of a long, long tradition. We're also now today in a campaign. We're raising $3 billion in philanthropy to support Mayo's education and research. You know, we're a nonprofit organization, so everybody here is salaried. This money goes to our education, our schools, our laboratories to make a healthier future for everyone. So when the Mayos established this background, they formed a team. I want to meet you a couple of our leaders here. Dr. Noseworthy is the Chief Executive Officer of Mayo Clinic. He is a neurologist, and he works closely in a teamwork sense with Jeffrey Bolton, our Chief Administrative Officer. So you see the physician with a patient focus and the business leader with the sound, accurate business practices working together for a common goal of serving patients. Every department at Mayo Clinic is that way. Physician leader, administrative partner, working together for our patients. If you come along this way, this is the cornerstone of the first Mayo Clinic building, which was constructed in the year 1912. And we have this embedded here with the stained glass window. One of my favorite quotations from Dr. Mayo: I look through a half-open door into the future, full of interest, intriguing beyond my power to describe. He loved the future. And so the stained glass here should give you a little bit of a sense of what's ahead. Be excited. Come join us. Maybe you're a patient. Maybe you want to work here. Maybe you want to study here. Maybe you want to make a gift here. Whatever you can do to come help us in this, this goal of advancing medical science, we'd love to have you with us. Kind of a tableau that shows the critical conversation that launched what is Mayo Clinic today. I'd like you to meet Dr. William Worrell Mayo, the father of the Mayo brothers. He was born near Manchester, England in the year 1819. This was the epicenter of the Industrial Revolution. So he grew up, you know, the novels of Charles Dickens. He saw both the opportunity but the challenges of disruptive technology, of industrialization. He got a tremendous heart for giving back to people. He believed that no one is big enough to be independent of others, and whatever you have, be it money, ability, physical strength, capacity, you have that as a trust. Help somebody else with whatever gifts you have, help somebody else. The Mayo family came to Rochester in the year 1863, 1864, during the American Civil War. Abraham Lincoln named Dr. Mayo to be a Union Army examining surgeon. That's why they came to Rochester. Why did they stay here? Mrs. Mayo said, this is our last move. She was tired of being uprooted, moved around the country. So Lincoln brought us here. Mrs. Mayo kept us here. You kind of see how these things go. 1883 is the scene that we're seeing here now. Dr. Mayo, now a very senior physician, a tornado wiped out the city. Category 5 storm came through. And in fact, over here, this shows you a film clip with pictures of the destruction. We've also taken a map of Rochester in the 19th century and imposed a map of today's Rochester, so you can see how the storm hit. For those of us who know the city, it hit southwest near Apache Mall, churned its way northeast, and ended by Century High School, where I live. So that storm was a very real thing here. Dr. Mayo's now in charge of helping the wounded survivors. He needs nurses. Most women have their families to look after. What is he going to do? He goes down the street to the Academy of Our Lady of Lourdes, run by Mother Superior, Mother Mary Alfred Mose. Like him, she was an immigrant from Luxembourg. She said, of course, I'll send my sisters to help you. So they became his nurses, and the casualties were taken care of. Good things happened from that crisis. We're now about a week later, a week after the tornado. Mother Alfred comes to his office with a true vision. She says, this city needs a hospital. The Franciscan sisters, we will pay for the building of a hospital and will be your nurses if you and your sons will be the doctors. Dr. Mayo hesitated. This was expensive, it was risky. What are we going to do about this? Mother Alfred was a force of nature by herself. He resisted, she persisted. She carried the day, they shook hands. St. Mary's Hospital opened in the year 1889, one of the first hospitals built on the germ theory, the Listerian theory of safe surgery. So you have a brand new hospital with antiseptic surgical techniques, with his strong young sons as the surgeons, her dedicated, selfless sisters as the nurses. They lived at the hospital 24/7. Their convent was on the hospital grounds. Working together in a brand new hospital, the railroad bringing in people from all over the country and around the world to this small city on the Midwestern frontier. The Mayo practice grew and grew and grew. And now let's meet the Mayo brothers. Here we see William and Charles Mayo. They earned degrees from all over the world. They were both presidents of the American Medical Association. They were statesmen of medicine, traveled, gave speeches, but they never forgot their humble parents and the Franciscan sisters. So that's why when they became very, very successful, they could easily give it all away, because they said, we're holding this in trust. This is ours, but it's not ours. It's ours to give to help other people. And one of the examples that inspired them is right over here. You saw Father Mayo in the glass cabinet. In the year 1869, Father Mayo and Mrs. Mayo mortgaged their home to buy a microscope. And they made that sacrifice for their family. They were not wealthy people, but they took on a $600 mortgage to buy a microscope to help their patients. Well, when these two brothers became world famous, they could think back very easily to mother and father with their generous gift, remembering this and then establishing the nonprofit foundation. So we're now kind of a library-style exhibit here in Heritage Hall, but the foundation, look at these books. The title of each of these books represents the values that we stand for. At the foundation, of course, our primary value, the needs of the patient come first, but also respect, healing, excellence, integrity, compassion, innovation, stewardship, at the top, teamwork. This is how we live, how the Mayo brothers function in their lives, how we function here today. And it's a very powerful kind of a concept. Whatever your skills may be, you can add something to help our patients. So if we come around the corner over here, you saw on the benefactor wall the names of people, and our buildings are named for benefactors, our laboratories all have the names of donors who support us. But everybody who makes a gift to Mayo Clinic is important. And we have this here to honor all gifts, because 97% of the contributions that we receive are under $1,000. So here's a story of an 8-year-old girl. She ran a lemonade stand and gave 100% of her income to the Mayo Clinic. So she made this poster. Here's her advertising. Give money, buy my lemonade, give money to Mayo. We have this lemonade here as a way to say thank you to her. We literally got a coffee can in the mail. opened it up, and it was full of change. It was her entire summer earnings that she gave to the Mayo Clinic. It's very humbling to us because it shows the trust that people have. Now, she was a savvy young woman. She actually had gone online to research Mayo Clinic and compare Mayo to other organizations. And so she made a business decision that her gift was best invested at our organization. That's pretty powerful for an 8-year-old girl to come up with. And I have to be honest with you, when I bring people through here who can create a building for Mayo Clinic, and I mention she gave 100% of her income to our purposes, that gets their attention. It kind of helps them imagine what might they be doing. Mayo has had a non-political and bipartisan relationship with the American presidency since Abraham Lincoln's days. We are the only medical center to have touched essentially every administration of the 20th and 21st century. So this display over here, I was privileged to go to the White House and research the Oval Office and the architecture. So we built this in the style of the Oval Office. All the china you see here is original 19th century White House china. So if you went to a state dinner at the White House, this is what they would be serving and what you would see in decorations there. All the photos, though, and the letters are talking about White House families and their relationship with Mayo Clinic. And the trust and the respect is bipartisan, both parties. You know how things can be divisive in political life. Here they come together. And so look over here on this panel. Lyndon Johnson, Barbara Bush, Walter Mondale, and Dick Cheney have all served on the Mayo board. Now, at any other gathering, they may have differences in their political philosophy. They all believe in the Mayo Clinic. And if you read these articles, they're all patients, they all trust us, they all respect us. So in American life, what a great way to bring people together for a shared purpose. Great stories here, so many of them. Just a couple over here. Charlie Mayo, 1922, was asked to come to the White House to take care of Mrs. Florence Harding, President Harding's wife. She survived a very serious health episode thanks to his recommendation of care. There was a newspaper headline at the end of her care when he was leaving. It said, "Dr. Mayo leaves Washington, President greatly relieved." And so that got people's attention, maybe unintentionally. 1938. Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt were here. Their son James had surgery at Mayo Clinic. Now, if you know the date, 1938, this was the Munich crisis in the run-up to World War II. So Chamberlain and Hitler were meeting in Czechoslovakia to discuss the fate of Europe, while Franklin Roosevelt had the Western White House at a train depot here in Rochester, which is now a Mexican restaurant. You may go there for lunch once in a while. But that train depot was the Western White House. And Roosevelt was following world events while his son had surgery here. To show you how things had changed, Mrs. Roosevelt, very social woman, became friends with her doctor's family. And this was the era before there was much security. So we have a letter that the doctor's wife just brought over a jar of homemade marmalade for Mrs. Roosevelt, came to the Kaler Hotel, went to the front desk and tipped the bellman and said, "Do run this up to President and Mrs. Roosevelt for their breakfast." He did that. We have a nice note from Eleanor Roosevelt saying, "The President loved your marmalade for breakfast." Now, if you think about that kind of friendship and relationship, you just don't find that today. We also find, that's why it's really fun to be here, because you're always discovering things. Franklin Roosevelt came to Rochester and he gave a speech to our large park area. 75,000 people filled Soldiers Field to hear Franklin Roosevelt. The town population was about 25,000 at that time. They came from everywhere to hear FDR. We'd always known about this, didn't really have much information. Lo and behold, KROC radio, you go down their basement, dig around, dig around, dig around. They found President Roosevelt's speech. So here we have a photograph of Roosevelt with the Mayo brothers on their time in Rochester. This is a 1934 Philco radio. This was state-of-the-art when FDR was here. You press the button.
Rochester gives President Roosevelt a real Minnesota welcome on his visit to join in a tribute to Rochester's distinguished citizens.
So we had a question come in
Sure.
asking, was President Roosevelt ever a patient here, or his son was, right?
His son James was here. Roosevelt was here twice to give a speech to the Mayo, which we heard, and to take care of his son. He was not a patient here himself, however.
Okay. Great.
One of our doctors collected Mayo Clinic cartoons, and so Mayo is a character in many, many cartoons. Dick Tracy had a cartoon episode that referenced Mayo. So here we see a cartoon. This is actually Humpty Dumpty. So the king's horses and king's men can't make Humpty Dumpty feel better again, so he goes to the Mayo Clinic. Here's, of course, we use it a lot. This is a ham sandwich going into the Mayo Clinic for a little treatment. This is a person in a factory making the world famous BLT and needing Mayo to add to it. So over and over again, people have this play on words, hold the Mayo, do different things. Lots of movies have shown Mayo Clinic. Airplane, Bart Simpson came to Mayo Clinic. A couple of very dramatic soap operas involved Mayo Clinic. Lots of different things.
And of course, everybody on House has done an internship at Mayo Clinic.
Yes,
right?
and House and ER and several of them have. And we have the Mayo app and many, many wonderful things. But we've always been about the latest technology of the day. So you would have your app, or you would probably send a text message or talk to your Periscope friends on how you communicate. Now let's dial back. The year is 1914. The first Mayo Clinic building, you saw the cornerstone. We worked with the Bell Telephone Company for the most advanced and first paging system in the world. So every Mayo Clinic doctor had a personal telegraph code. You would hear that telegraph ticker going off in the building, know that was your code, go to this telephone, you'd call your secretary and get the patient's condition. So we've always been about using technology to communicate. Now, they didn't have a periscope back then. I couldn't even imagine that. But the principle is the same, though, as far as connecting us. If you came to Mayo Clinic, you'd find that we have this remarkable system of colored lights by our exam room doors. And they will tell our staff at a glance, oh, the room is occupied, patient is waiting, consultation going on. So these lights have a very important visual meaning. But they began with these wooden semaphores, so that the nurse would simply move the colored slat down, give the same visual signal. So to go from this to this, a perfect evolution. We're also really the Fort Knox of medical data. We have more than 8 million patient records on file here. And these records are a source of great help. If you've been a patient here, we keep your record forever so that we can refer back to that if you come back and see us again. We can do studies on women with this condition or men with that condition, people of a certain age. We can trace families. So in my case, 4 generations of my family have received care here. So if my children have a health issue, we have their great-grandparents' medical record at instant access. There may be things in great-grandma's record that would bear on my daughter's care today. We began this many, many years ago. And here you see the old-fashioned way of moving medical records. We had pneumatic tubes and kind of torpedo vessels here. We would load the paper records into a canister, and you may remember this when you first joined Mayo. You'd hear kind of a rumbling behind the wall, and the records are being shifted, throughout the building. Now, of course, we're the world leader in the electronic medical record. Safety, accuracy, privacy, all guaranteed. So when you come to Mayo, we care for you as an individual patient, but you're part of this 8 million population, so you gain the knowledge that Mayo's gotten from treating 7,999,000 people to help you. And that's why the care here is personal, but it's very deep, very, very broad. We put a high degree of focus on customer service. So we're a large organization. We get, Barb, would you say about 1,000 patients a day come through here, 1.5 million patients every year, and they all have spouses, children, big, big crowds of people. But nobody should ever feel they're part of a large machine. We're a highly personal organization. So we emphasize service, respect, different things. So our exemplar of this, when we're here to meet Joe Clinic, this is the doorman of the Mayo Clinic many years ago. He is kind of our hero for customer service. It was a humble job. but he had the most amazing memory for faces and names. And he would tell you these corny jokes to put you at your ease. He'd remember you from last year. Oh, Lee, welcome back. And how's everything in whatever hometown you're from? He would just connect with you that way. Everyone loved him. He was actually called Joe Clinic, was his nickname. He was profiled in Life magazine. Life magazine came out here to do a story about Mayo Clinic, and they chose to include the doorman as part of this story, along with the very famous surgeons and different things. Look at this date. This is September 4th, 1939. This was the week that Nazi Germany invaded Poland and World War II began in Europe. So against that unfolding tragedy, Life said, how do we tell a positive story? Come to the Mayo Clinic. They profiled the Mayo Clinic and the doorman. So this kind of shows you, when we talk about service here, we're grounded. We know what we're doing. An example of that, here's a letter. This was written by the president of the John J. Bergen Company, investment company, 40 Wall Street in New York. He's writing a letter. But he's not writing to Mayo's CEO. He's not writing to his own doctor. He's writing to Joe Clinic. Dear Joe. And he's saying basically, I've been coming to Mayo for years. You have made my wife and me feel so at home. So this is the head of a Wall Street investment firm sending his personal thanks to our doorman for the care that he gave. Military service here, huge part of our community. We honor the men and women in the American military. This is Dr. Walter Franz. He's a physician here and very active in the military. He's had multiple tours of duty in Iraq and other theaters. He came back from the war in the Mideast and gave this flag, which flew over the Angel tent in Iraq, where very seriously wounded civilians and military personnel are cared for. He gave this flag to the nurses of the Mayo Clinic, that they were the guardian angels of Mayo. So he wanted to honor the nursing profession. Very important message. But how fun that was, because it kind of gave us a chance to go way back into history. We did some research. This lady is Florence Bullard. She was a St. Mary's Hospital Mayo Clinic nurse in the First World War. She received the Croix de Guerre, the highest award of the French government, for her services running a hospital under enemy shell fire. We have letters from nurses who talk about wounded soldiers laying across the ground as the German planes flew overhead, bombing the area, and the Allied planes came in and chased them away. And she never gave up the post. She was there to take care of those soldiers. So we talk about putting the patients first. She was there literally on the front lines doing that. So what's the common theme that runs all through here? We all have a job to do. We all have a way to serve people. We're always about the patients. And so come back in another time. We'll have new exhibits here. We're always getting donations. It's a fun place to visit, and we love questions. We love visitors.